Hey everyone, my name is Leah and welcome back to my channel. I have not posted a video since like May, but I figured a good way to get back into filming would be to do the mid-year book Freakout tag, so that is what I'm going to be doing today. Before I get into the tag, I just wanted to mention that I'm going to link a bunch of things related to the Black Lives Matter movement in the description box below, so please check those links and resources out. Alright, there are 13 questions in this tag, so let's get started. Right off the bat, the first question is best book you've read in 2020. I'm really not good at picking one favorite of things, so I'm actually going to mention two books. One is Felix Ever After by Case and Calendar. I read this book last month and it was so good. I gave it 5 stars. This book follows a trans boy named Felix as he's dealing with questions of his gender identity and also as he's dealing with friendships and relationships and also transphobia at his school. I read this book as an ebook, but I really need to go out and buy it because I loved it so much. I know I want to reread it again already. I loved all the characters. I loved the story. I thought it had a very good balance of serious topics and also of just pure goodness and fun and cuteness. It definitely does deal with some difficult topics, so I'll be putting trigger warnings for this book down in the description box below. It was just such a good book, and also I'm not really a fan of love triangles, but this is one of the few books where I've actually enjoyed reading about the love triangle and where I felt like the love triangle was really well done. I know the description of the book mentions a love triangle, so if that makes you less likely to read it normally, I would say go ahead and read it anyway because I'm not a huge fan of them usually, but it was so well done in this book. I'm sorry if there's background noise for the rest of this video because it just started raining. The other book I want to mention for one of the best books I've read so far this year is Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston. This book follows the son of the first female president of the United States, Alex Claremont Diaz, and his evolving relationship with the Prince of England. And this book, I don't think it's necessarily like the most well-written book ever, but it's just so cute and so fun. And for me, it's really been a comfort read. It was the first book that I read this year. I had borrowed it as an ebook from the library and I immediately went and bought the physical copy and then read it again. I also got to meet Casey McQuiston and they signed my book and I talked to them briefly and it was just really nice. I also reread this book for a third time this year via audiobook. Yes, I have read this same book 3 times this year. That happened at kind of the beginning of everything with COVID and I really just needed a comfort read, and this book is a really big comfort read to me. Both of these books also had some quotes about like queer experiences that really spoke to me, and that's another reason that both of these books have been some of my favorites that I've read so far in 2020. The next question is best sequel you've read in 2020, and I had a hard time with this one because I haven't read that many sequels this year that were books I had read before this year. It was either I read an entire series this year or I was rereading something. So the only one I can really think of is that I read Come Tumbling Down by Shauna McGuire, which is the 5th book, I think, in the Wayward Children series by her. These books follow different characters who have gone through portals to other worlds and come back and have to get reacquainted with our world. But then some of the books also go into these other worlds. Come Tumbling Down follows one of my favorite characters in the series. I really love all the characters, but Jack is one of my favorite characters and she was one of the main characters of this book, so I really enjoyed that. I don't really want to say too much more about the plot because I don't want to spoil any of the rest of the series, but I highly recommend this series in general. I do wish each of the books were a little longer and more fleshed out. I've tended to want more from all the books I've read, but I've still enjoyed them anyway. The next question is new release you haven't read yet but want to, and I have a couple answers for this one, and I already know these are just the things that I came up with off the top of my head, so there's definitely some things that I haven't read yet that I really want to that I'm just not thinking of right now. The two I want to mention are both queer books. One is the Falling in Love montage. Pretty much all I know about this book is that it's like a YA lesbian rom-com, and that's all I need. It's 2 girls falling in love over the summer, but I know that they like don't mean to fall in love. I don't really know. I've heard it's really cute. I'm really excited to pick it up. The other one I'm really excited to pick up is Girl, Serpent, Thorn, and again, I honestly don't really know what this book is about. I know it's a fantasy book and I know the main character is bisexual, and that's really all I need. I'm very excited to pick this one up. Also, the cover is beautiful, and the, I think, Fairy Loot exclusive cover, I wish I could get my hands on that Fairy Loot exclusive cover. I just got a phone notification that D&D Beyond has a mobile app now, and I'm very excited because I'm a nerd who plays a lot of Dungeons & Dragons. The next question is most anticipated release for the second half of the year. And again, I have a couple answers for this one, and there are probably some that I'm not thinking of. But speaking of D&D, one of my most anticipated releases is the third Adventure Zone graphic novel, Petals to the Metal. This is a graphic novel series that adapts the podcast by the McElroy brothers, The Adventure Zone, which is amazing and everyone should listen to it. It's so good, such good storytelling, beautiful, amazing, show-stopping. It's just wonderful. And so they adapted the podcast into a graphic novel form. And what's great about the graphic novels is they really condense some of the events of the podcast. So especially the first storyline, they were really getting used to the podcast, and I feel like there was a lot of kind of extraneous stuff that I still enjoy listening to, but it wasn't as relevant that the graphic novel condenses. And also, because they wrote the graphic novels after the podcast finished, they were able to sneak in a lot of foreshadowing and kind of extra narrative stuff in the graphic novels that weren't in the early arcs of the podcast because the DM, Griffin, hadn't yet figured out what the end game was. I am so excited for the Petals to the Metal graphic novel. So excited. I think it comes out in like a week, so I need to pre-order that like now, but I don't want to spend money. But I want the Adventure Zone graphic novel. Anyway, there are two other books that I can think of right now that I'm really excited for in the second half of the year. One is The Silvered Serpent, which is the sequel to The Gilded Wolves, which I really enjoyed. I'm very excited for this. I'm very excited to see where the story goes. I feel like this is coming out in September. I could be completely making that up. I have no idea when this book comes out. I'll probably look it up and I'll put the release date on the screen when I edit this video. And then the next one is Queen of Coins and Whispers, which is a sapphic fantasy that has a romance between a queen and her spy master. I need it. I need it right now. It's technically already out in the UK, I think, but it doesn't come out in the US until like September or October or something. So I could get it through Book Depository, but I'm trying not to spend money right now. Also, the cover is beautiful. The next question is biggest disappointment, and for that I'm going to say I Am the Messenger by Marcus Zuzak. I didn't hate this book. I didn't like it. I gave it 2 stars. It's one of the few 2-star books I've read this year. Have I read any other 2-star books this year? Oh, I did. I've started DNFing books more, so I feel like I've been reading a lot less 1- and 2-star books, but with I Am the Messenger, I had heard so many good things about it, and it's also the same author of The Book Thief, which I think I've read, but it was in like 7th grade if I did read it, so I don't really remember anything about it other than like one plot point, and I really need to reread it. But The Book Thief is great. So I had very high expectations for I Am the Messenger. And also, I had only heard praise for it. I had not heard anyone say anything negative, and I did not like it. I didn't like the main character. He was a very typical male, annoying main character. Didn't like him. I liked the premise. I liked what the author was trying to do with the story, but I just did not like the main character and some of the choices he made. And I understand he was supposed to be a flawed person, but he was just, I just didn't like him. I think I'm going to be unhauling that book because I have it still somewhere. The next question is biggest surprise of the year, and for that I think I'm going to have to go with Stars Above by Marissa Meyer. I read this in June? May? I read this at some point. I think it was at the end of May. Time right now is not real at all. This is a short story collection that takes place after the events of the Lunar Chronicles, and the reason it was such a big surprise for me was that I honestly had low expectations because I haven't read the Lunar Chronicles in years, and I was actually thinking about unhauling this book, possibly, and then a couple people convinced me to pick it up because they said it was worth it, and I'm so glad I did because this was so cute. I had forgotten about my love for the Lunar Chronicles because it's been so long since I read it, and this actually made me really want to reread it because I love all those characters. There were just such cute stories in here, and I loved it so much. I also don't usually love short story collections, but I feel like I liked this one better because they all took place in the same universe, and it was a universe that I already knew. But this was just so cute, and it made me happy. And You know when you read a book that just reminds you of your love for reading? Because this book did it for me. I don't even know why. It was really good. The next question is favorite new author, and this could be a debut author or an author that's new to you. And for this, I'm going to say Elizabeth Acevedo. I read all 3 of Elizabeth Acevedo's books in June, and I loved every single one of them. Also, I highly recommend listening to her books on audio because she narrates all of them, and most of them have verse, and so she reads those so well, and I loved each of them so much. There's The Poet X, which was the first one I read, and then I also read With the Fire on High and Clap When You Land, and I loved all 3 of them, but I feel like With the Fire on High might have been my favorite. I'm not sure. It's hard to decide. Also, even though I love the audio, I think I do want to read all of them in physical form at some point just to see how that reading experience differs, and I really want to get the physical copies of With the Fire on High and Clap When You Land at some point because the covers are beautiful, and inside the dust jackets are also beautiful from all the videos I've seen of people with those books, so I really want to get my hands on those at some point. I love her writing, I love her stories, I love her characters. Ugh, Elizabeth Acevedo! She's just such a good author. I love everything about her books. The next question is newest fictional crush, and I don't really get crushes on characters in books much, and also I read a lot of YA, and since I'm an adult, I don't crush on YA characters, so I don't really have an answer for this question. But then the next question is newest favorite character, and one of my favorites is Felix from Felix Ever After, which I talked about before. I love Felix, and one thing I especially love about Felix is that he's such a flawed character, a very realistic flawed teenager, and he makes mistakes and he does dumb things, but it's very realistic, and I never hated him for the decisions he made. I thought they were very realistic decisions because he's a teenager, and he was just such a well-written, well-rounded character, and I love him so much. I want to protect that boy with my entire life. Then the other characters I want to mention are all of the characters from the Adventure Zone. I love all these characters so much. I listened to the podcast for the first time this year and read these 2 graphic novels, and I just love them so much. I love their character development, I love their stories, I love their backstories, I love everything. Everyone should listen to the Adventure Zone and read these graphic novels because they're so good. The next question is a book that made you cry, and for this I'm going to say The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. This is a World War II historical fiction, and I sobbed like a little baby for the last 4 chapters. I think I have a picture of my face just covered in tears. I had to literally take my glasses off to read the last couple chapters, and I was slightly blind and had to hold the book up to my face like this because I couldn't see. Because I had my glasses off, because my glasses were getting wet from my tears. But also, I cry a lot in general, so there are definitely other books that made me cry. That's just the book I can think of that made me cry the most. Then the next question is book that made you happy, and I'm going to talk about 2 different graphic novels for this. I'm going to talk about Check Please by Ngozi Ukazu, and I'm going to talk about Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. These are both very cute and very gay graphic novels, and I love them so much. I have been following Check Please for years online, and it finally came to an end this year. That also made me cry like a little baby. Check Please. So good, but also made me so happy. And same with Heartstopper. It's made me cry. It's made me so happy. I had a grin on my face so much while reading it. Please check out both these graphic novels. They're so good. The next question is most beautiful book you've bought or received this year. And I've gotten a few really pretty books, but I think... Oh, it's behind me. But I think the book that I'm going to say for this is The Nowhere Girls by Amy Reed. I love this cover. I love the contrast between the floral and then the really bright yellow, and I like the spine too. And I know this is sapphic, and I'm really looking forward to picking this up, but I haven't read it yet. The last question is what books do you need to read before the end of the year? And so many. So many books. There are a lot of books I really, really want to read. I also have so many books on my physical TBR that I need to read, but I think I'm going to mention a few of the adult fantasy books I really want to read because I'm trying to get more into that genre because I really like it. First up is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I have been hearing everyone talk about this book, and I'm going to be reading this finally this month. I'm very, very excited because people talk so highly about this and the queer rep in this. I'm so excited for this. I also am planning on reading The Poppy War because a bunch of my friends have read it, and if I don't read this, I will be murdered. Maybe I'll read that this month. Maybe I'll read it next month. I don't know, but I've got to read it soon. Another thing I really want to read is more Robin Hobb books. I have a whole stack of them right here. I've read her first book, The Assassin's Apprentice, and I really want to continue on in that series, and I have a bunch of them, so I need to read those. And the last adult fantasy I really want to read this year is Priory of the Orange Tree, which is sapphic, and I've heard it's so good, but that, let me tell you, that book is a chunker, and so it's very intimidating. So I have not picked that book up yet. I'm not sure when I will, but I need to read it before the end of 2020 because everyone has been telling me to read it, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna love it. That was my mid-year book freakout tag. I would love to hear about your favorite or least favorite books you've read this year, so please leave a comment down below. Also, let me know about some of your answers to these questions. Also, I was tagged for this by my friend Liv, so I'm going to leave her blog link down below. Thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe this video, and I'll see you guys later with another video. Bye!